Indeed, Allah orders justice and good conduct and giving to relatives and others, and forbids immorality and bad conduct and oppression and transgression. He admonishes you that perhaps you will be reminded. I am going to get to why we chose this ayah in a few minutes, and the relative of this ayah to what we are discussing this evening. But first, welcome. My name is Ali Isa, and on behalf of the cafe team, we thank you for attending and taking time out of your personal schedule to be at our cafe forum. If this is your first cafe forum, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. MashaAllah. So we thank you. Anybody from Huntington? Several, mashallah, from Huntington. So Huntington is 45 minutes away. Aslam, assalamu alaikum. Anybody from DC? So we would like to also acknowledge not only our newcomers and our regular guests, but also the folks from DC. We have Farhad. Is Farhad here? Is Farhad in the room? Farhad, here you go. Farhad Chowdhury. So Farhad is from DC. He is a co-founder and a CEO of Fifth Tribe. They create, develop, launch a digital and brand platforms. It's an upcoming, and he's been very successful. So he's been a friend for several years. He has joined Dr. Saud Ashraf, co-founder of Cafe. So thank you for making the trip to our Cafe Forum. Also, there is a guest here I'd like to acknowledge, Mrs. Rajia Hasib. Mrs. Hasib is a local community member. Please raise your hand or stand up. So she has written a book titled In the Languages of Miracles. And if you Google it, there's a really nice book review in the New York Times back in August. I encourage you to check it out, and her book is available online as well. And we are thinking that we may even extend an invitation to Rajia to hold maybe a cafe forum on the story of the book, inshallah, maybe in the near future. So thank you for taking the time to come. And for the newcomers, and as a reminder to our regular guests, our cafe platform is designed to discuss and discourse current issues, current events, and how they relate to Islamic thought. But we do it in a respectful and ethical manner, and acceptance of each other's different point of views. So that way no one is judged and no one is being judged. So feel free to chime in, and I will try my best to facilitate and moderate the discussion. But typically, our regular guests, keep their remarks very unbiased, and we certainly appreciate that. However, they don't hold back. We have had some heated discussions in the past. On our last forum, it was on May 13th. So it's been a while since we've seen one another. So if you don't mind, I'd like just to give you a couple of updates. It's been 4 or 5 months. And normally I would not do that, but I think it's worth mentioning because of what Cafe has been able to accomplish in the last 3 to 4 months. So in June, Cafe was invited by Brookings Institute to attend the U.S. Islamic World Forum in Doha, Qatar. Our part was to be part of an action group to develop a community-led initiative to counter violent extremism in the United States. Farhad was one of the members as well. So a proposal is being drafted at this point, so stay tuned, and we hope to share one with the community in the near future. September, last month, we were invited by Mr. Ahmed Ashkar. The name may sound familiar to you. He is a CEO of Holt Prize, and he has been a guest speaker of Cafe in the past. So we attended the Clinton Global Initiative Holt Prize Award dinner. As you know, Ahmed is an American Muslim and from a Palestinian origin. The Holt Prize Foundation holds an annual competition that aims to create and launch the most compelling social business ideas that tackle grave issues faced by billions of people. It's been named as one of the top 5 ideas changing the world by President Bill Clinton and Time magazine. So the 2015 challenge that was presented by President Clinton, how to provide quality education to 10 million children under 6 years old in urban slums by 2020. The winner received $1 million seed capital to jumpstart this social business idea. President Clinton presented the award to the team. There were 4 judges. One of them was Muhammad Yunus, who was a 2006 Nobel Peace Prize winner, and Julia Gillard, who is the former Prime Minister of Australia. 1,000 people were invited across the globe. We were fortunate to be invited, and it was an opportunity for Café to expand their network. So we were able to identify with some folks to advance the vision and the mission of Café. Next month, November 13th, we will be at Duke. So the head of the Islamic Studies at Duke University, Dr. Omid Safi, has reached out to Café and would like to have a dialogue with us on what a collaboration of Duke and Café looks like. So on November 13th, a team of us will go down and we'll meet also with their business development office to see what can we do. Some of the ideas that they suggested is to possibly hold the leadership retreat that we are known for at Duke. And they're also interested in this Café forum to be held at Duke. We will not hold any in Charleston. We will continue, but we certainly are interested in having that dialogue and see where that direction takes us. Also, Dr. Saud Ashraf has left West Virginia after 16 years of service. So he declined to have any type of an acknowledgement and accolades and what have you, the humble person that he is. So we did acknowledge him at a Jummah prayer one time. We would like to acknowledge him again. It's a great loss for our community. It's a great gain for Northern Virginia. And we wish you continued success in your new journey. He will continue to be involved with Café, but remotely. So any support of that, we would greatly appreciate. So as a brother, as a friend, man, I'm going to miss you. Some of the members have come and said, what are you going to do now without Saud? You know, we've always been together, so you'll always be in my heart. I love you, man. And also Feroz. Feroz has a new son, Rafe. So now we have a new member to the Café team. He's about, 2 months?
Yes.
2 months old now. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
The baby is healthy and well.
You're beyond your time limit.
We'll get back to the verse. So one of the scholars said that this is the most comprehensive verse in the Quran because it captures the essence of a wide range of the Islamic teachings in just a few words. But I'm probably just going to focus on aggression, transgression. Because we know that leads to mutual hostility and could lead to armed confrontation, and it could cause disorder. And this is what we are experiencing locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. But that's not the behavior of a Muslim. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God Almighty, orders the Muslims to be just and kind, not only to their kind, but also to others, irrespective of religion, race, nationality, country, you name it. So if we look at starting from, let's say, September 11 to the recent shooting in Oregon targeting Christians, to the aggression, constant aggression that the Syrian people, the Afghani people, the Pakistani people are facing on a daily basis, the Burmese, it is not a behavior of a Muslim. And some of it is done in the name of Islam. And so we as Muslims, as God ordered us, we unequivocally and unconditionally condemn transgression and aggression in any form, either with one another, with our family members, our friends, or to anybody from outside the community. So we certainly do not stand for that. The issue is that we normally do not speak and not visible to anyone else unless someone attacks Islam, or we want to defend Islam, or we want to talk about what's happening in our country of origin. And we do acknowledge that that needs to be changed. The question is, how do we change it? How do we make that shift? So I'd like you to, I want to take you on a short journey. I want to take you to the era pre-9/11. So for those of you who can remember what our lives looked like pre-9/11, tell me, what does that look like? You can say it in one word or maybe a short statement, but please speak up so the mic can pick you up. One word or short statement. What did our lives look like pre-9/11? Complacent. Very good word. Delusional. I like it. What else?
No one knew that we were Muslims at that time.
No one knew that we were Muslims at that time. Excellent point.
The cave
Yes.
sleeper.
I'm sorry?
The cave sleeper.
The cave sleepers. That's an excellent description. Excellent description. So, a typical quiet suburban living, would you say it was boring? No. Anybody else disagree? Anybody agrees with maybe a bit boring? So, some describe it a bit boring. Nobody knows we're Muslims, we're quiet, we're physicians, we're engineers, we're attorneys, predominantly, and that's it. Goes to work, come to the masjid. So 9/11 took place and robbed us from this boring existence. Now, fast forward, post 9/11, what does our life look like? Sorry? Scared.
Brought us to the stage.
Say it again.
Brought us to the stage.
Broke us, divided us,
No, brought us to the stage.
brought us to the stage. Gotcha.
Limelight.
We're in the spotlight. Miserable, defensive,
Continuously randomly selected
Vulnerable.
at airports.
say that again.
Continuously randomly selected at airports.
Continually being selected, profiled at airports and others.
Randomly selected
Ra-
every time.
Every time.
Yes.
Ms. Agri.
The only good Indian is a dead Indian, and the only good Muslim, non-practicing Muslim.
So yeah, a bit of a division, a bit of a stereotype, or a little bit of labeling, or categorizing. So what we did not realize, that we have always been part of the framework of the society. But what happened is that the shift that took place, we started to build bridges with our communities to showcase our contribution, because our contributions were not known. We were the physicians, we were the engineers, we were the professors, we were the taxi drivers, we were the business owners, the gas station owners. You name it, we were in every single profession. But no one knew it, because they did not know that we were Muslims and have this meaningful contribution. So it enabled us, if somebody would look at the glass half full, it enabled us to showcase our contributions. And obviously, we've had some struggles.
But in one way or another, Muslims were introduced better.
They were introduced better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even it was taught in universities.
Yes. So now, since we are building bridges with the larger community, and they are getting to know us, and we're trying to get to know them better, we're trying to build a social capital and political capital. The question is, how do we do that? We are inexperienced in that. And so who is to do it better than our guest speaker here, Mr. Farooq Mitha. So I'm going to introduce him. His bio was fairly long. I tried to shorten it as much as possible, but I would still like to be fair in capturing his accomplishments. So first of all, Farooq and I have been friends, and he's also a friend of Saud and Fahad and a couple other people in the community. I remember first meeting Farooq in DC at, I believe, one of the restaurants. I was with our good friends Haris Tareen, and we met then, we connected. We felt like we've known each other for a long time. And just through casual conversation and what Café does and what he does, we said, this is a gem. I mean, this is a true gem of what he's able to accomplish personally, professionally, not only to himself as a professional, but to the community. And it's certainly a pleasure to have him. So right now, currently, he serves as the Special Assistant to the Director of the Department of Defense, Office of Small Business Programs, and the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manufacturing and Industrial Base Policy. In these roles, Farooq oversees more than 120 billion of annual awards to small businesses. In addition to assisting the Joint Chiefs of Staff Secretaries of Military Departments. Farooq has served in the Department of Defense since joining the Obama administration in 2011. Throughout his time at DoD, Farooq has supported several programs and initiatives, and some of these initiatives were adopted across the federal government by the Obama administration and was recognized by the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Innovations in American Government Award Program. Farooq has spoken to hundreds of small businesses across country and met with members of Congress, local elected officials, industry association CEOs, vice presidents of large firms, university presidents, to discuss how to support innovation in industrial base. He served on the steering committee of the White House Business Council, Business USA, the National Export Initiative, and the White House Asian American and Pacific Islander Initiative. Prior to joining the Department of Defense, he was a partner in the law firm Geller Mehta, that's his dad, where he focused on civil litigation, business transactions, government affairs, and administrative law. He consulted in issues related to the Middle East and South Asia and served as the executive director of Emerge USA. It's a nonprofit civic engagement organization which seeks to politically enfranchise underrepresented communities. He has a strong background in international policy and national security. He is proficient in Arabic. He has written opinion editorials offering commentary on issues concerning the Middle East and the American political system, and they have been published in domestic and foreign publications. In 2009, he conducted research as a Fulbright Fellow in Amman, Jordan, where he focused on Jordanian-Israeli economic relations. His research then published in 2010 edition of Middle East Policy. He obtained his law degree from University of Florida Levin College of Law and holds a BS degree in interdisciplinary health sciences from University of South Florida. With that, please help me welcome Mr. Farooq Mitha.
Assalamu alaikum. Let me just get this set here. Okay. Wow, this is a great turnout. Thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you enjoy the presentation. And I want it to be really interactive. I plan to just spend a few minutes talking and then opening it up. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to interject and say what's on your mind. I think today I set the world's record for the number of flights it takes to Charleston at 4. Has anybody beat 4 from Washington, D.C. to Charleston? So it's great to be here, and it's important. I started my morning in Toronto at about 5 a.m., and at about 4 p.m. I got here. So here I am. And this is really important for me. And Ali and Saud and I have been planning this for a very long time, so I'm glad that we were finally able to do it. I was asked to come here to talk about engaging the political process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the work of Emerge USA. You guys saw some of the flyers that went around, and please sign up for our email list so you can continue to get updates. This is a really difficult time and a really interesting time for the community. Many of you were just saying about pre-9/11, post-9/11. I was a college student during 9/11, and when you heard that lengthy bio at the end, you probably heard BS degree in interdisciplinary health sciences. What in the world is that? Well, I was actually pre-med. And like many of our young people, I was, highly encouraged by my parents to become a doctor. And I was going down that path, and it's a great profession. But, when 9/11 happened, I felt that it was time for me to make a change in my career path, because we really did not have Muslim, South Asian, Arab American, Massa, whatever you want to call it. We didn't have a representation in the corridors of influence in this country. And that's down from the state and local level all the way to the federal level. And I made a change, and I decided to go to law school, and then all that other stuff that you heard kind of came after that. And I will talk a little bit more about myself later, because I think it's important to kind of chart my path and how that can be helpful to other people. But really, I was asked to talk about how do we engage the political system, how do we change and shift public policy. And you guys have heard what's been going on, Donald Trump and Ben Carson, and how many of you have heard of Alan West? Alan West. So I'm going to just give a shout out to Emerge's Political Action Committee. We were the PAC that beat Alan West in 2012. We took the most Islamophobic member of Congress, and we were responsible for knocking him out. That's the kind of stuff. That is the kind of stuff that our community needs to be doing. And one person can really make a difference. And I want everyone to, if you're going to walk away with one thing from tonight, it's that one person can really make a difference. And with Emerge, we've been able to institutionalize Muslim civic and political engagement. We've been able to mobilize the community in swing states, in critical races. We've been able to make a difference. We've been able to educate the community on the importance of the political and civic process, and really why they should be getting involved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and I wanted to start with just a little bit of 101, just to kind of keep it interactive. One of the things I think we really need in our communities, we have a lot of challenges, and these challenges of political engagement and getting involved and making a difference and even changing policy, whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy, we have a long road ahead of us. And we haven't even scratched the surface of what needs to be done. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how we can take some small steps to starting to do that. But one of the things that I've seen as I've kind of traveled the country and talked to communities, we really struggle with understanding who governs us and what they do and what the different levels of government do. So I'm going to kind of throw some questions out to you guys. I need to see the next slide first, though. Okay. So, I'm going to start with this, and that's not going to be a quiz. We have the legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch. The legislature makes the laws, the executive enforces the laws, and the judiciary interprets the laws. And this is at the federal government level. Now think about what we need to do. We need to have influence here, and the third one's really tough. But the first two, we can really make an impact on. But it will take a lot of organizing, a lot of mobilizing, and really a lot of talent development among our youth, which I will also talk more about later. But the federal level of government is probably the most out of reach in terms of our community, just because they're not down the street, right? I mean, if you want to go lobby for an issue to your member of Congress, you generally, like AIPAC and other groups do, you have to mobilize literally thousands of people to go to Washington, D.C. And while that's important, we want to do that, I don't know how many of you heard the saying, all politics is local. So we need to really understand what these folks do and then what happens at the local level. But in the legislature, you have your members of Congress, the U.S. House, the Senate, the President. But I want to see who can maybe tell me about state government and what state government is responsible for. Or actually, let's just start here. Can anybody tell me what the federal government in general is responsible for? It's a lot of stuff, but can anybody just throw out a few things?
The big tickets, defense.
Okay,
national
defense.
security.
Okay. What was that? Yeah, okay, interstate commerce, yes. Correct, yes. Banking,
Healthcare now, and
Healthcare.
education now.
yes, yes.
Welfare,
What's that?
welfare.
Welfare, yes. Okay, so you guys have a good grasp of that. I think there's a lot of other things too, but that's a good kind of basic understanding. Foreign policy, defense, currency, monetary policy, trade, things like that. How about state government? What's state government responsible for? All right, let's hear some examples.
Property taxes,
That's down one more level. Yeah,
so just schools, police. That's also local.
that's down one level too.
Integrated federal rules in states.
That's partially, yes. I'll switch over here. Well, technically, under the 10th Amendment, all powers not granted, when you said everything else, I mean, you were kind of, in a sense, you were right. Whatever the federal government doesn't have power over, the state government does have power over. But really, education, welfare, healthcare, highways, and you have your governor, your education board. This is using a model of Texas because we kind of use this presentation in different areas, but generally every state has the same stuff. Governor, lieutenant governor, agriculture, attorney general, some sort of a comptroller, some type of an education board person, but really education, welfare, health, highways, and of course there's domestic state taxation and other things like that, but generally, yeah, a lot of the other things not covered at the state level or at the federal level are covered at the state level. How about city, county? County. Somebody said police. Who said police? That would be city and sometimes county. Local education is county. Usually, every county has a board of county commissioners. This is kind of a Florida example, but they have a board of county commissioners. They have a school board. So a lot of times when we've advocated for getting Eid as a holiday, we've gone to the county school board in some states. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds of that. I just really am trying to make a point, which is that when we go and talk to folks, and I know this community has been really proactive from what I've been hearing, and we just need to know what people do. In fact, just last week, we, through our PAC, we supported a guy running for attorney general, or not attorney general, state attorney in South Florida. And some of our community members went and started talking to him about Syria. I mean, he's just like, I have no clue what's going on in Syria, nor do I have any influence over what's going on in Syria. And sometimes it can isolate us a little bit because, we need to just know who we're talking to. And there's a big educational component to that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. And one of the things we're doing through eMERGE is we're doing civics trainings at mosques in the states where we have chapters. So we go to like family night and we do like a really deep dive into this presentation, which Farhad's firm actually helped develop for us. And we really try to change the community's mindset to help them, A, understand what this is all about and how to engage the process. And B, we have some programs that I can get into a little later that actually lower the barriers to entry, I would say, to meeting your elected officials. They're not that far out of reach. They're not untouchable. They're not unreachable. Even the guys at the federal level, they have district offices. We need to really be proactive and institutionally engage these folks, but we need to come prepared at the same time. So a lot of the work eMERGE USA does surrounds that. And this is just more of the municipal government stuff. I want to talk a little bit more about this, which is about making policy. You can't see, you see these circles here. I want to walk you through this in detail. This is kind of the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. If we really want to influence policy, we need to be involved in every step of this process. So you have like the people, the citizens, I guess, which is us. Then you have the party structure, which, Democratic Party, Republican Party. That's really important. It's really, really important. I will get into that, why it's important to belong to a party. It doesn't matter which one. Then you have federal, state, and local government, which we just went through. And then after all that, at the very end, you see laws and policy at each of those different levels. But if our community wants to be involved in this process, let me go down the list of what we need. We need candidates to run for elected office. How many of you in here have thought about running for office? 1, 2, great, you should do it. I highly encourage you to do it. The second thing we need, and that's not, there's no silver bullet to this, right? I mean, we can run people for office, We have to have campaign people that work on the campaigns of people running for office. In other communities, who many of us know, have done a very good job of that. It's not just the candidate, it's who works for them, who influences them. But there's two types of jobs there, right? There's people who can work on their campaign, and then there's people who can work in their offices when they actually win the election. So there's two different types of people there. Then you have interest groups. You have lobbies. Emerge USA is an interest group. We're a small one, but we are an interest group. And there's others, the Cuban American National Foundation, the J Street, APAC, the NAACP. These are all interest groups. And they push on policy and policy change from the outside. All this right here is really on the inside. This would include lobbyists as well. So that's three different layers, but I'm going to go back to the party. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and many of you hopefully know this, but you know the Democratic National Convention and the delegates, and in 2008, Obama versus Hillary, there's this big talk about superdelegates and elected delegates, and all that stuff is part of the party structure. Those people drive the platform of the political parties. And that starts really in your own neighborhood. When you vote, and you go vote in a precinct, there is an elected, how many of you know that there's an elected position called precinct captain? Anybody aware of that position? Anybody, is this the first time anyone's hearing of that position? Anybody? So most of you guys didn't know about it? Well, there's a position in your local party called precinct captain. And you run for that position within your party, and you're elected to that position. Your job is to organize the Democrats. Let's say you're a Democrat. Your job is to organize the Democrats in that precinct. And that's your job. And when you go vote on the ballot for President Donald Trump, maybe next year, you see at the very bottom the precinct captain for your precinct. And you can vote for who it is. If you want to run, Ali or anybody else, if you want to run, you can become the precinct captain. That's the most basic level to start office if you want to run for office, precinct captain. But then you have your county parties, and you have your state parties, and you have your state delegates to the national party, and you have your Democratic National Committee, and all that stuff is mirrored on the Republican side. What are we doing in that part of the process? Really? We just vote. Voting, and this is kind of Emerge's mantra, voting is like breathing. It's really the bare minimum of what we should be doing. That's just keeping us alive. But there's so much other stuff that's involved that we don't even think about. So look, if you look at the party structure, you have committees in the party, you have precinct chairs, county chairs, state chairs, delegates, then you have these other national committees. These guys in this party structure are really the folks that are picking who's running for office. Now, I don't know what the primary structure is like in West Virginia, but in general, when there's an election of any kind, and it's a partisan election, you're going to have a primary. And usually the winner of the primary is the person who wins the backing of the party. And that person, hopefully, for them, whatever party is, gets elected. If we don't have a say in this process, or if we're not involved in this process, we have no way of even having any influence over who our candidates are and who's running that care about the issues that we care about. So we can run our own candidates too, but if those people aren't involved in this part of the structure, then they're not going to win, or they're going to have a very, very difficult time winning, especially with names like our names. So it's just it's a political reality. So we're really trying to get people to understand this part of the process as well, and I'm sure you may have a lot of questions about how that works, so we can open it up for more discussion in a few minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about now. Well, I'm going to go back for a second. So all this right here, except for interest groups, all this other stuff is how we can influence things from the inside, right? But that requires having people who want to be in the inside. If we don't have people that want to run or work on campaigns or work for members of Congress or their governor or any of that stuff, if we don't have those people, we can't do it. If we're not willing to groom and build the talent in those young people, inshallah, in our community, then we can't do it. So there's a big effort that we have to undergo here just to kind of change the game from inside the political structure. I'm going to talk a little bit about Emerge and how we kind of do a little bit of both. And I'll tell you a little bit of my own story of how I did what I did. we have a network, I would say, of institutions, and this is like groundbreaking work in the Muslim community. Nobody is doing it this way. I think Farhad, you can maybe attest to that. Nobody in the country is doing what we're doing with this specific model. So we have 3 different organizations. We have a nonprofit, we have an advocacy group, and we have a PAC. And they're all branded under Emerge USA. And they're each distinct legal entities. And they each have their own function. These organizations, this organization here, the nonprofit, is doing the education work. So the civics training, the leadership development, the get out the vote, the candidate forums, all that kind of stuff. The advocacy group is doing lobbying, and that's kind of our newest arm, but we've helped defeat anti-Sharia bills in states like Florida, for example. We actually hired a lobbyist to go to Tallahassee and help us defeat the bill, and we did it. Now we're doing it in some other states. The PAC endorses candidates. We don't have a Muslim PAC. We don't. It doesn't exist. Well, it does now, but it didn't exist, 6, 7 years ago, but it exists now. We're trying to recommend to the community which candidates they can endorse, and or which candidates they should vote through our endorsements. And we're raising money for candidates in a very strategic, institutionalized way, so the community as a whole gets credit for whatever money we raise, rather than like an individual who's just in the mix of everyone else. So we've had a very good success rate with the PAC, with all these institutions. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is kind of the way that every other community has done it. Whether you look at the Hispanics or the African Americans or the Jewish community or anybody else, these are the types of entities that they use to get their mission accomplished, so to speak. We haven't done that until now. I mean, imagine, we've been in this country for decades. It's only now that we're starting to think about how do we play within the legal structures and utilize them, super PACs, and you guys hear about all these different terms. Well, we have to have our own, or else we can't affect the change that we want to make. And I'll give you a couple of examples. First, I'll give you my own example. The reason I got my job was because the community in Florida supported me in 2008. And they said, hey, we want to support Obama for president. We want to raise some money for Obama. But we want to do it through an institution. We don't want to do it through a person. So at that time, Emerge was really small, and we just had a little chapter in South Florida, but we raised a substantial amount of money for the president at that time. And when he got elected, one of the asks was that, we would like me to get a job in his administration. And it happened. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years, and I will miss President Obama, but, we have a system and it has to go on. But anyway, so that kind of shows you that the model works. That if we engage the system, we can get something out of it. We can get our young people into jobs where they can champion the public policies that they want to change. And that could be anything. We really need to have influence in every sector, whether it's education or foreign policy or healthcare. We have tons of physicians. How many of you guys were consulted before Obamacare passed? Anybody get a call from your elected officials or from the White House? Probably not, because we weren't organized and we weren't at the table. And if you're not on the table, you're at the table, then you're on the menu. And we've been on the menu for decades, even before 9/11. In 2010, just another success story, we had a candidate running for governor of Florida, and we endorsed her. She was the Democrat. And we said to her, we would really like you to bring some of our young people into your campaign and give them internships or jobs. And she said, great, I would love to do that. Send me some resumes. We would go back to the community and say, hey, can we find some people who can do this work? And we got crickets. It took us 7 months in the entire state of Florida to find one person who was interested and willing to work for a candidate for governor. I mean, they literally said, we will give you the job. Just give us the person. We'll give them the job. We'll pay them. Just give us the person. We couldn't find the person. How sad is that? 4 years later, this is the good part of the story, we have a program called Emerging Leaders in Florida and Texas, and now we're replicating it in some other states. What we do is we vet our young people. So we put them through a 6-month training program. And we take 20 students a year. At the end of the 6-month program, it's based on the weekends. It's not like a full-time program. We train them on government, civics, politics, and then we help them get internships and jobs in government and civics and nonprofits, whatever they really want to do. We're really trying to fill the leadership gap that exists in our young generation right now. So, yes?
When you mentioned you couldn't find anybody, is it the fault of the youth or the parents?
I would say a little bit of both, but I would say primarily the parents. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the youth don't even know this is an option, right? They don't even know that this could be a career path, and it could be a lucrative career path or a very influential career path. But that wasn't in the psyche. We haven't trained or talked to our young people about even getting involved in this stuff. We're starting to do it now, I think, over the last few years, but 7-8 years ago, it wasn't even in our minds. You know what I mean? So, please.
But at the same time, you say, what the mind doesn't know, the eyes couldn't see. So how you blame the parent where they don't know it?
Well, yeah, that's true too. That's a good point. And that's why I don't really know who to blame, to be honest. I mean, the reality is we just didn't have it. We weren't thinking about it. We didn't know it existed. I mean, if I go even in our community today and I say, what does a PAC do? Or what opportunities are there in politics or government for a career? They wouldn't really even know. Which is why there was a big need for this type of an organization. And we're not the only ones. I mean, there's other people doing pieces of what we do. They just don't do it quite as cohesively as we do it. But that brought about the need for this type of work in the community. Does that make sense? So I can't blame the parents all the way either. So good. That's a good point. But I will give you the success story for us, at least in Florida, is that 4 years later we had another governor's race last year, and we supported the Democrat again. We're bipartisan, but in that race we supported the Democrat. The campaign was run by a Muslim. The campaign manager, the guy who was running the whole thing, was Muslim. That was the biggest campaign in the country last year. It was like a $100 million campaign. There was a Muslim guy running the campaign. Please.
Do you think the course of study you've chosen for yourself helped in knowing about all these emerging and engaging things?
Yes. Me personally?
Yeah, I think the course we Muslims are choosing for studying just engineering and medicine and medical school and stuff is taking us a little bit away from being aware of these things.
Yeah, yes and no. Well, I think those things are important. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't be studying in those fields, but we should diversify for sure.
That's my point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we just don't know. It was what the gentleman in the back was saying. We just don't know. I mean, when is there going to be a Muslim David Axelrod? I mean, how cool would that be? I mean, I'm serious. I'm not even joking. I mean, that would be great for either the Muslim Karl Rove. With a better view on the world, I would say. So that's kind of what we need to do. But my story is interesting because I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have an institution like Emerge. I did it on my own. Like, I had nobody to get advice from. I was just doing it. I literally threw myself into the fire, and I just learned, and I just figured it out. But how great would it be if we had a real organization, which we do now, that's mentoring these young people, helping them build networks. There was not a single Muslim when I was young that was in my age range that I could talk to and say, hey, how do I do this? Or, why don't we do this together? It didn't exist. That was in 2003. That wasn't too long ago, I guess. So, that's what we're trying to do. So when we had that governor's race in Florida last year, we had 10 of the graduates of our leadership program hired as full-time paid employees of that campaign. 10. So we went from 1 to 10 in 4 years. And we were actually beating people away because a lot of people wanted to be in that position 4 years later because we had done some of this work in terms of letting people know, training them, and giving them the opportunities and things like that. So that's an important piece of all this, and I think that's the biggest thing that we need to do in the young generation. So. Yes.
Yeah, just curious about the whole process, how you got the community involved and everything. I think from just what I've seen in my few years alive is that there tends to be one of the barriers to political activism is that there's a mentality of we're not really a part of this place, or there's like a going back home mentality, as some people like to call it. And so that creates like a distance between what we can do here and what we should do here. So I guess my question to you is, how do you at the same time make that subset of the community that doesn't feel like they belong within this country also show them that, hey, even if you go back home or even if you don't feel like you belong here, you still have a stake in these politics? So I mean, just how did you do that personally?
Yeah, I mean, mostly I'll kind of talk about it from an Emerge perspective. It was just education. I mean, people don't realize that when you go back to this stuff, these different levels of government, that they really do affect the day-to-day lives. But we have to bring that forward in a way where people understand it. I'll give you another example. You know, in one of our mosques in Florida, they were going to build a garbage dump right next to the mosque. It was only through that we realized that the local city council really could vote it down, and we lobbied them, we got it voted down. But so I think one thing is whether you're going to go back to your country of origin or stay here, there are things at stake in your day-to-day life that matter, and we just need to bring that forward to people. As I answer part of your question?
Are they generally receptive of it, do you think?
I think they are, but it's just an educational, and they have to see that it can make a difference. This stuff right here, right here, it's very proactive. And I'm glad you asked that question because I forgot to mention this. Other thing that I've really seen is that we're a highly reactive community. So something happens, whether it's overseas or here, and we're trying to catch up and we're trying to react to it, right? But all this stuff, whether you're going to get involved in your party or run for office or work for a member of Congress or whatever it is, it's proactive. I mean, you have to be on the grind doing it day in and day out. And you're hoping that when something does happen, you're ready and you can pick up the phone and call 10 members of Congress and say, hey, this is what I need from you, and this is why it's important. And that they will have the relationship to listen to you. I've had so many people come to me and say, how much money do we need to raise for this member of Congress to get them to vote this way on Syria or on any other issue? I'm like, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, it's really relationship driven. It is kind of quid pro quo, but it's not like we're used to it kind of in some of our countries of origin where you give someone a, 50 lira and then they let you pass the border or something like that. That's just not the way it works here. So, it takes really sustained engagement. And I use the Syria example because I lived in Syria for many, many years or months. So I've just had a lot of those experiences. But anyways, so it just takes a lot of engagement. Like we have to be proactive. And if we can't be proactive, then we can't do it. And that's really, that is the biggest challenge that people don't receive well. They get it, but to actually do it, it's to say it and do it is two different things. And getting people to do it takes a lot of time.
So just a follow-up, and not to dictate the conversation, but one last question. You said the whole thing about being reactionary, and that's, I think, well, most of us would agree with that. Is it also important then for us as a Muslim, politically active units to also be involved in issues that don't maybe directly affect us Muslims? Because it kind of makes us seem disingenuous, for instance, if we're only standing up when, it's our issues and not when it's our issues as a country, maybe?
Yeah, no doubt. That's a very good point, and you're 100% right. We have to, and the challenge that we have from an organizational perspective, when I talk about Emerge, is that you can't get consensus on anything from our community, hardly. I mean, it's really tough to find one issue that's kind of like either healthcare or foreign policy or economic that everybody will rally around. So for us, we're kind of finding our way through that now. But in general, you're right. I mean, we should be in every sphere, and we should have experts in every sphere, and we should have folks that can lead our country in these different spheres. Because at the end of the day, it will come full circle. And you could be the chairman of the Federal Reserve and you're Muslim. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. And one day there's going to be someone who says, oh, wow, that guy is Muslim. You know what I mean? So it will come back and come full circle to address our community's issues either way. So we do need to be involved at that level as well.
And I think that breaking into leadership for political leadership's sake is particularly difficult, especially in times where being Muslim may not be as popular as it was before. Just leadership in general, but definitely...
Was it ever popular?
Well, yeah, it was pre 9/11 especially, but, I think that being the head of surgery as a Muslim has a different agenda than being a political leader trying to break into a field where you face certain isolation and you face a lot of backlash from, especially in states that are not as hospitable and diverse, like West Virginia is. I think that it is a difficult choice to make personally. And collaboration with others is really a good thing to consider instead of doing it alone. That collaborating with other people behind an organization or a cause is probably a better and more meaningful experience, I think, for an individual.
Yeah, and there's no silver bullet, right? I mean, we almost have to do a little bit of everything. And you're right, in some parts of the country, some things may work and other things may work. So we need to identify, and I think Café is doing a good job of this, as to what works here, and then doing that. So yeah, you're 100% right.
Can I put you on the spot for a second?
Please.
Since you are our self-declared guinea pig. How are your parents proud of you today? And part two and
Sure.
part three. Part two is, were they proud of you the day you told them you weren't going to medical school? And part three is, since this is being recorded, could you share with us how you think you could help parents react to that news that somebody, because I have a feeling that some people might not feel real happy when their kids say, no, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to medical school. So, if you could, I would really appreciate it.
I think I want to go to your question. No, I'm just kidding.
This is really good.
Yeah.
I think you need to answer.
Yeah, are we okay on?
Yeah.
There's enough time.
I kind of wish you said we were out of time after your question.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. So your first question was, are my parents proud of me? I think so. They've said that, so I take that at face value.
I can actually answer that. I've met his mom and his dad, and at the Emerge event in DC a few months ago, when we were there, his mom and dad were there, and there's several other Congress folks were there, ambassadors, and you name it. Farooq stood and spoke on behalf of Emerge for about 10-15 minutes, and I was sitting at the next table of his mom and dad. Being a father myself, and I saw the light, actually. I mean, I saw nur, I saw something coming out of them, and the body language, and then just the accolades that they're giving their son. There's no doubt that his parents were very proud. You could see it, you can actually feel it in the room.
And it's easier for somebody else to say it than for me, so thanks for doing that. But when I first told them that, they weren't upset, they were supportive. But they kind of every now and then reverted back to, why don't you just try to make money? Just go make money. So they are overall supportive. There's always this back and forth, and when you go into public service or government work, you do make a sacrifice, and there's a lot of good to it, but there's a lot of negatives. Could I have continued my law practice and grown it and had a firm of 10, 15 lawyers? Probably. I could have done something like that, but that wasn't the path I chose. And quite frankly, there is plenty of economic opportunity in this space in different ways as well. So there's always a little bit of back and forth, but by and large, they're supportive. And I think that your third question was, could me personally help? What was your third question?
How would you address people who, when their kids say, I'm interested in politics? I've met families who, even if the kid says he wants to be a lawyer, that's like, what? What path are you on?
Yeah.
It's engineer or doctor. Take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
If you can't do that, I
How
can't.
many more minutes?
Yeah, I think after all...
I'm not Arab, so I don't really have religious faith, or Pakistani, or Indian.
Maybe
Because I'm stereotyping.
Maybe post-Obamacare, we don't have the same push towards medicine. I don't know. But, I think it's really just a matter of an educational process, and that's why it's important to get the youth from a young age to start getting involved in these things so their parents can see it, right? And when they see their kids, like, meeting with the governor or being the body man for the president, whatever it is that they're doing, they automatically feel proud, like, that's my kid, and he or she is, making a real difference for our community. And I also think that, I was going to say something else and it slipped my mind, but yeah, I think it's more of an education process. I also think that I lost my train of thought. But I was going to say that getting them from a young age is important as well. Because that is when you get the buy-in of the parents. Because, parents are always, I'm not a parent, I don't know, but I know from my parents, we were always kind of doing our activities, baseball, little league, this, that, soccer, whatever. So this just needs to be another thing like that. And I think when the parents see it, and they're also themselves educated on what the opportunities are in that field, I think that they would be more comfortable in doing that. So
We have a question.
My question is about swinging between the Democrats and the Republicans, given the percentage of Muslims in the United States. Do you always recommend playing on the winning horse, or Muslims have to choose locally whatever they prefer, or they have to have a unified attitude all through the states?
There's a couple answers. That's a good question. And that's really, so the Emerge model, you're letting me pitch my organization, so I appreciate that. Our model is to swing voters in swing states. So we have we've made a decision as an institution that it's most important to play in the states that matter. Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. Those are the same 5 states you hear about all the time. And they're the states where we have a couple 100,000 Muslim voters, so we could swing the way we wanted to swing if we're organized well enough. And that's what we did with getting rid of Allen West in Florida. So organizationally, we're trying to bring some cohesion and to move the needle in close races, I would say.
So when you have like a local politician or a local congressperson who is like building bridges with Muslims or showing interest in Muslims, what's the advice? Muslims should be like showing support for both, or
we should talk to both, and we should say, here's what we care about, and who is most in line with that. It doesn't matter what the party is. It doesn't matter. It's whoever is in line with what you guys care about in Charleston, for example. Now, I will say that as individuals, I have a little bit of a different answer. I think as a person, you should pick a party and get entrenched as deeply as you can into that party. It doesn't matter which one. Because at the end of the day, right, when you have these interest groups, like Emerge or whoever else is out there, they all have people from their own communities that are in these party structures. So you have somebody knocking on the door saying, I want to talk to you. You need somebody on the inside to open the door and let you in, or else it's not going to work. So I think as individuals, and in some states, you can't even vote in the primary unless you're registered with one of the parties. And if you're not voting in the primary, then you can't even have a say in who's going to represent either side. So there's 2 different answers, if that makes sense.
I think we focus too much when we talk about politics on what your exact career choice is. For instance, like if you want to be a politician, you should go into law, you should study politics. I guess the political sphere kind of affects every citizen. So if you are a doctor, I think that we should have more people who are doctors and engineers being more involved in politics. It's not necessary that you change your entire interests in your career path to do what you want to do in politics and incite that change. And I think kind of we're oversaturating on lawyers, so even if a Muslim person has their interests in line with engineering and medicine unforced, say for instance that's your interest, you can pursue that interest and end up back in politics and back in that sphere. And I think that's important to highlight the fact that not everyone is forced into their career path, but with that career path they can still incite change politically.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because that was what I was going to say. I'm going to take credit for your comment, but that's where I lost my train of thought. That's a very valid point.
There's no way, certain profession you cannot divert. I mean, there's enough time even in certain profession to your own family not to go to other field, politics and so forth. So to be realistic, you cannot.
Well, I mean, look at Bill Frist.
You could say about it, but you cannot. I mean, certain profession you will have more impact on politics. You want to be in politics, you have to go to law.
I mean, I think that certain professions are more conducive to politics. I will agree with you on that. But you've seen physicians and engineers and others that have gone and been like Bill Frist, who was a senator, and I think he was the Senate Majority Leader back in the day.
Stephen Tabuco here. Stephen Tabuco was a doctor who came down. Was it Tom yesterday? Tom.
And my personal view is we need that in the political system. I don't like that we have a room full of lawyers. I mean, that's part of the problem, maybe.
Dirag is next.
Jazakallah khairan. I think your organization is way overdue. We really need to support you. We need way more of them. Just two things on the same line. First of all, some centers, and I don't want the imam to be upset with me, unfortunately we have this mindset that for a long time some imams or some religious leaders discourage our communities from participating in the political process. And I think it was a pure, innocent, I don't want to say ignorant, but it was based on, this is not for us. If we get in it, we have to compromise our principles and so forth. And I think, because I've heard it in many, many communities. And I think we are getting out of that after the shell shock, we went through. So we need a lot of people like your organization, like you, to basically start educating our community. Listen, one day, if you don't get involved, you're going to say, I wish I was eating when the white, whatever was eaten. So yeah. Part of that, our reluctance is because of some of our leaders made the mistakes, and I don't want to throw them under the bus. So we really need this. Our hope is in our youth, because our youth don't have the stereotype, they don't have the mindset that we brought with us when we landed in this country. So, but that doesn't mean that parents or grandparents go to sleep. But we really need to encourage our kids, and it doesn't matter. They want to be doctors, we can encourage them to be civic leaders and get engaged. Whether they are engineers, doctors, physicians. The other thing is we get excited, and I see this in our community. For example, who you want us to vote for? We only think we can vote for senators and presidents. We forget that the Board of Education gentlemen, 5 of us could make a difference. And if he knows we voted for him, next time he will be in the House of Delegates. Next time he will be a senator. Within 5 to 10 years, he will be a U.S. senator. So we need a lot of education to know that the sheriff or the Board of Education man, these are small seeds that 5 or 10 people, especially in a state like ours, can make a big difference.
You're right. Can I make one?
Yes, to make the comment, and then Anil, I'd like to make a short comment as well, and then we'll take also questions.
Okay, I'm just going to make a quick pitch for Emerge real quick. One of the biggest initiatives we have right now is we have a membership drive that we're doing where I have some forms up here if we can pass them around, but we're doing a $50 a year membership to Emerge USA, and the money is really nominal, but it's really about creating a national database. So there's 2 purposes behind that. One is we want to be able to show as an organization that we have a substantial base of members, because that's how you get people to notice. If we can say nationally we have X number of members, just like all the other groups do. I don't think any other Muslim group has taken that approach. And second of all, it's a way for us to kind of get people to support us in some way. Many people leave these events and they're like, well, what can I do? And I do want to talk about that before we wrap up. But one thing you can do, and if you do nothing else, is to become a member of Emerge. So can we pass these? Do you mind passing these around? And if people want to fill them out.
These are different ones.
They're different ones, yeah. Those are different ones. Yeah, so that's that. And a lot of Muslim organizations say, man, if we could just get every Muslim to give $1 around the country, then we could get rid of all these kind of fundraisers and things. That's kind of what we're trying to do with this as well. So for those of you who are interested in becoming members, I highly encourage you to do that.
Hey, Farooq, in selling Emerge, a lot of people here are active members of MPAC.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about how these 2 organizations synchronize and how they're different?
Yes, that's a very good question. So MPAC is a public affairs council. So we work very closely with Salam and with Haris and whatnot. Well, Haris isn't there anymore, but with Salam. So MPAC, I would think of MPAC as the policy shop, right? So they'll do the deep policy recommendations for elected officials, predominantly at the federal level. They do other things too, but that's one of the things that they do. So they're like a public affairs council, whereas we are a grassroots organizing political organization more so. So I'll give you an example of how we collaborated. When we had an election in Florida for, I think it was the presidential race in 2012, we did an issue guide where we compared Obama and Romney. It was nonpartisan, 501c3. MPAC did all the research. So they pulled out where they stood on the issues that mattered to our community. We worked with them to put it on a pamphlet to then distribute it out to the community. So it's like a hand in glove relationship in many ways.
Just one. It is a two-part question. We'll be quick.
Very short.
Very short. I guess it's really fantastic to have you over. In fact, I know from the cafe team, this is kind of one of our pet peeves. We wanted to, from a social and political activism point of view, one of the main themes has been how we get the community involved and at these levels that you've talked about. I completely agree. I understand that many people immigrated to the U.S. and Canada. I think the financial concern was always primary, which is what has led them to drive their kids into these different, into these different occupations and whatever. But I've got kids of my own. If you have kids and you're trying to guide them into this, what concrete, steps? I know for you, you kind of just threw yourself into it. But that's not easy. That could have gone either way. I'm sure you appreciate that as well. Alhamdulillah, it worked out well. But what would you do, if you have kids, you say, I think this is a good thing for you to look at. What would they do? Law is one thing, but there have to be other avenues. I know you guys have a leadership program. But what other avenues would you suggest to someone who's in high school, who wants to really look at this? What should they do? What's the best way going forward where they can,
There's a few things that I can just think of offhand. Usually when you're in high school, you have your student president and different things. I think encouraging them to participate in whatever their student government is, whether it's in college or in high school, would be something good that they could do. I think as a parent, getting involved yourself could be, and taking them with you. So when it's political season, there's so much volunteer work to be done. And they can get community service hours for doing it. So at your local campaign will be going precinct, walking door to door, or they'll be making phone calls, they'll be going to events. I would think as a parent getting involved, even if you don't like it, but just trying it and exposing them to some of that stuff is a good start.
One last question, very quick one.
Why is that?
Okay, sorry.
Well, okay, at the next Emerge dinner, then I'm bringing my 6-year-old. Don't tell me not to.
No.
Okay, the other thing is that what kind of budget you guys work with? I think it's important for Muslims to know, because I remember when I made the announcement yesterday, I was talking about this, that it's almost unfortunate that if it was like a Jewish organization, the budget would be in the millions, really. So what kind of budget are you guys working with?
What do you think our budget is? You've seen some of our work.
It's probably in a few $100,000. That's what I think.
Yeah, you're right.
But I don't know. I thought that was 300,000. That's what I
thought you were going to say, man, it seems like you guys are doing millions of dollars worth of work. No, I'm just kidding.
No, not because I know, but I want.
Yeah, no, our budget for our nonprofit is about, I think it'll be between $350,000 and $400,000 this year. To really do this work right, it should be more like $2 million a year. So we have a long way to go.
I think it's more for Muslims to know that.
And that's part of this membership drive thing. Our goal is to get 30,000, 40,000 members over time so we can have this kind of small donor base of people who really buy into the grassroots.
How much is that true, that there is a big financial barrier to get into politics in this country?
Not true at all.
And is that a myth, total myth?
I think it's a total myth.
Okay. So what do you think, at minimum, somebody needs to have? Other than
to do what?
Commitment and volunteer to get into this profession.
Time.
I don't think that's a good question. With all due respect, because I don't think you need anything. You just need to do it.
But why is there a myth then? Why is there this?
I think there's a certain amount of money you need to run for office. Yes. Because you have to raise money for your campaign. People need to believe in you and all that stuff. But if you want to work on a campaign or you want to volunteer on a campaign, that doesn't cost anything. Anybody can do that. It takes time. And, some of these guys, I have friends that have worked as paid staff on political campaigns, and they've made very good money out of it in the long run. They might not start off that way. I started off stuffing envelopes. That was as a volunteer. But now, I got a job in the Obama administration 10 years later. So, in the end, that hard work will, I think...
Okay.
Just to follow up, how many employees did you have when you first started up, and how many employees do you have with that 400,000?
We had 0, and now we have 8.
In how many years?
4.
Awesome.
Well, we started earlier in 2006, but the first few years was just a small group. Now at 2010 we raised some money and we hired people. So in 4 years we went from a budget of 0 to 350, 400 this year, inshallah. So.
Great.
Sure. I have two things that, please.
2 seconds. I just have a comment. We as immigrants, we need to follow this very kindly. And one thing, if you have people that, Brother Dara said, that those who can come and give us some guidance, give us some. The second problem our immigrant community is facing, we talk about Afghanistan, Syria, be American, start your own life here first. Get involved in the issues locally first. Don't go to your local delegate or local person and say, I want you to vote on Syria this and they should not do this. I want you to send Pakistan this much money and this problem. That is not what they are interested in. Build your relationship with these individuals. Be American first and then. And don't divide yourself. Be a Muslim first. Don't be Middle Eastern. Don't be Pakistanis. Drop these barriers. If you want to make an impact, you have to drop these barriers.
Well said.
Yeah, I think the easiest impact is definitely at the local level and on local issues. But sometimes there's really urgent matters abroad, and we have to champion those things that we believe in as well. But there needs to be a balance, and definitely there should be a domestic focus for the most part.
Definitely, you need a balance. You could take a person out of the country, you can't take.
Yeah, you can't tell. It's hard to tell someone not to worry about somebody.
Different people have different. You can't tell a Palestinian to forget about Palestine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. I mean, or Syrian to forget about Syria.
Correct.
It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
If you can't, if you could do it here and there, great. If you can't, if in all your ability, if you want to do it only here, it's your freedom. If you have the ability, the courage, the strength, and everything, you want to do it in every place. Plus, I mean, as you said, you're a Muslim. It's all the ummah.
Mm-hmm.
So don't. I hate this boundary or if it is in my hand, I will burn something called passport. We are international. Seriously, 2 things I'm going to burn:
So-
nursing home and passport.
Just one. See, like.
Hey, we're being recorded.
We are crossing the red line.
I have 2 actions.
The last minute, please, if we can have just 1 minute for Farooq to close, and we'll go to action, inshallah, as I respect our guests.
I'll stick around if anybody wants to chat.
Yes.
Afterwards.
The one thing you made this very easy for us, to understand all this, and I think this was very important because the whole system needs to be clarified for our people, so they realize that it's actually easy to get into politics, like Feroz was saying. And this is very important for our young people, but the one thing is that you have to infuse our young people with the passion for politics that you have, and make them get over their money insecurities, which our first generation people are still suffering from. And get into this with a passion, and you have to infuse them with your passion so they can do this. And I think that's very important. You've taken the first step, and you have to be congratulated, and we all need to support you.
Thank you. You're right. I have 2 actions that I would give to the cafe, actually. We have a program with Emerge called District Day. And what we do is 3 times a year, we take groups of people and we go meet with our local elected officials. We do each layer of government. So the first District Day we'll do local, the second District Day we'll do state, and then the third one we do federal. I was just going to say that there's a couple of programs like our District Day program that you might want to think about implementing here. And if Cafe wants to do it, then we can provide the support and the training to do things like that. Maybe even forming a political committee of some kind that can take some of the things that we've done and just implement them here. They're turnkey, so.
Yeah, we're politically engaging currently anyway, so that could be with Evans and these guys.
Jazakallah khair. We'll break for Aisha, inshallah.